Hey everyone, welcome back to D Squared Stories, an audio fiction podcast bringing you short serialized weekly stories. We'll be continuing with the next chapter of Lottocracy. Without any further ado, let's get into a quick recap and get started. Last time, Lisa Fay was rushed to enter her proposal to end the Lottocracy by Reyes. I found myself talking with Matt and Megan, who faced great difficulties balancing their political ideals with their ability to work well with others who disagreed with them. Gammon encountered me and relaxed some of his previous restrictions on my movement and security, only before revealing his hand that part of this was so that he could advise me against ending the Lottocracy. On the first day of legislative session, tensions were high over a bill to remove statues of a controversial figure. When I stepped out to get some air, I heard Lisa Fay get attacked, and I followed a trail of blood to Reyes' office, where she was over top of Lisa's injured body. Chapter 4. We hold these truths to be fully randomized. I felt my fists start to clench and my eyes start to twitch with rage as I looked on at the facilitating chairwoman, Isabella Reyes, hovering over the body of the seriously wounded Representative Lisa Fay. My voice shook with anger. "Get off of her right now," I demanded. "Dominic is not what it looks like. The closest first aid kit I knew of was in here," she said. I was taken aback a bit by the ever-formal, ever-caffeinated young woman using my first name. I watched as she treated the neck wound with something and then proceeded to put something over it and wrap it with gauze that I failed to realize in my panic was laying right next to her. Lisa seemed to struggle with breathing, but clearly was still managing it and seemed not to be worried about Isabella. "I think she's going to be okay," Isabella said. "The cut was bad for sure, but it looks like she can still hardly breathe and she's not losing a crazy amount of blood." I stared onward as I watched Isabella continue treating. She looked so genuinely relieved. Lisa still seemed completely in shock with the whole situation and was taking in very labored breaths. It looked like there was no way she was going to be able to talk in this fragile state. I watched Isabella wipe her sweaty brow and lean back, seeming as if she just ran a marathon the way she was heaving. She had such a full smile on her face, though. "Gosh, those Muay Thai lessons really paid off. I can't believe I kicked that guy in the teeth," she said, her caffeine-addled brain seeming to bounce from one thought to another. "I told them not to do this. I told them I would handle it, but no, they never listen to me. It's always with the violence and the threatening with him." I watched as her mind moved a mile a minute. I worked up the nerve to ask her. "Isabella, who is they?" I asked. She stared at me. I watched as her adrenaline rush came to an end. Her face went back down from being completely manic to being her usual rehearsed fake smile. I understood now it had been a fake smile, because I saw for the first time what it looked like to see her truly happy after she stabilized Lisa. She stood up and went over to the window. I watched her open it. Was she really that hot in here? "No, Co-Governor Donovan," she said solemnly. "I hired an assassin to kill Representative Fay, but had a last-minute change of heart and decided to save her. Make sure you tell everyone exactly that's what happened." I watched in shock as she started to step out the window. "Isabella, what the hell are you doing?" I yelled at her. "I got racked with guilt for my actions and threw myself out the window, Co-Governor. You tried to stop me, but were in too much shock to realize what was happening." "Isabella, you're being crazy. You don't have to do this. Get back in here. I know you didn't do this." "Yes, I did, Dominic," she said, staring daggers at me. "After what I just did in here, I'm going to die one way or another. You and Lisa don't have to. Stick to my story. Announce the referendum bill will not see the floor. You'll be okay." She stood in the threshold of the window, widened her fake smile, and shot me 2 finger guns. I clenched my fist again and raised my voice. "Isabella, we're not doing that. If you fling yourself out that window, all you're doing is killing the one witness who can bring Gammon and Wong to justice," I said to her. "I'm not going to be silent, so why don't you help me?" "Wong has nothing to do with this." "You're a crappy liar. I know Wong is in on it. I know you've been in on it. It has to end. You know it has to end. You know I can't do it without you either, so get back in here." I stared at her, and she stared back at me. I watched her eyes well up a bit. I saw that I got her halfway with words, but the other half I would have to do with action. I went over to the window and grabbed her by the arm. Just as she dragged me around a mere day ago, I dragged her back into her office and sat her down on a chair. "There's no way to stop them," she said, between sobs. "It's been this way since before I got here. I've tried my best just to steer it in the right direction, curb Gammon's tendencies, but he's only gotten worse, more vindictive, more willing to pull the trigger on anyone he sees as a threat to the sortition." I tried to say something, but before I could, she grabbed my wrist. "He wanted you to actually die that day," she said, staring right into my eyes. "He thought it would be a wake-up call to everyone that we need more security resources and control. I barely talked him into letting you live and making it just an attempted assassination." I gently pulled my wrist away. "We will stop them," I said to her. "First things first, though, do you have Representative Balsawood's cell number?" She looked up at me confused. She pulled out her phone and searched through a category of contacts that was 300 people long. There was no exaggeration when I said I could not stop Gammon and Wong without her. She was resourceful beyond what any human could reasonably be. She handed me her phone with a contact page for James Balsawood. I punched in the number and called him. It rang twice and then he picked up. "Hey, it's Jimmy. Not a great time for a scoop. Can you call me back?" he asked. "I'd actually like to speak to Representative Balsawood," It's Co-Governor Donovan. Oh, my bad, Co-Governor. What can I help you with? I need you to tell Megan and Matt that I am in Reyes' office, and I need to see them both urgently. Can do, boss, he said. And one last thing, I said. I actually want to talk to Jimmy as well. I need something from him. Hey, yeah, I hope you're not implying something with any kind of conflict of interest. Say what you will about the sortition, but you could never get politicians this ethical by any other system. Nothing of the sort, I said. I assume you work with people who are good at discreetly moving around. I need some help moving something somewhat sizable, out of this office. It would be part of the scoop of the career if you come check it out. Yeah, I got someone in mind. Be there shortly after I get Matt and Megan up there. He hung up the phone. I loitered around with Isabella. I checked in with Lisa, who seemed to be at the very least in no worse shape than 5 minutes ago. In a short matter of time, Matt and Megan walked into the room. Megan gasped. Matt's eyes widened as he stared at what was before us. Close the door. Matt did it immediately. Long story short, Lisa was trying to put a bill on the floor to put the end of the sortition to a referendum. Wong and Gammon caught wind of it and tried to have her killed. Gammon also staged my attempted assassination because I wasn't cooperating with his rules. Oh my gosh, you poor thing, Megan said. She ran over to Lisa and knelt next to her to check on her. Matt stood still looking right at me. The messed up thing, he said. I'm not even that surprised. It's been weird how they herd us like sheep around here, like we're not even the ones in charge. They are. No offense, Miss Reyes. No, that's the idea, she said. You write the bills, pass the bills, and veto them, but when stuff comes up that threatens the system, suddenly the facilitators get a lot more hands-on. That's terrible and corrupt, Megan said. We have to get this message out there, out to the people and the officials. It's a rare day for the two of us to see common ground, but I completely agree, Matt said. Jimmy cracked open the door and came in with someone else. It was a young woman from the cafeteria staff. She had a food cart draped in a tablecloth. Jimmy was wearing a baseball cap backwards and sunglasses, for some reason unclear to me. This is Stephanie, he said, surprisingly unfazed by the injured woman in front of him. She's like me. Works here during the week, but moonlights as a paparazzo on the weekends. She can be trusted. I nodded. Matt and I helped gently get Lisa into the food cart and draped the cloth back over to hide her. First things first, I said. We need to get her to a hospital without security seeing her. I don't know who is compromised. Everyone seemed to nod or express some sort of agreement. We started out of the room. Stephanie pushing the food cart and Matt looking ahead. He started around the first corner on the way to the elevator. He stopped suddenly. Damn it, of all people, he said. I watched as Wong stepped into the hallway. He raised his eyebrows as he saw this assortment of people making their way down the hall. His eyes scanned up, and I saw the exact moment on his face when he saw the trail of blood leading to Isabella's room. He pulled his folder from his side and started rapidly shuffling papers, as I saw his eye twitch a bit as revelation and speculation took over his mind. I stepped forward. Alf, I said. Could I speak to you in your office for a moment? He continued shuffling papers as he nodded. He headed towards his office, the one right next to Isabella's. I grabbed Megan by the shoulder as I walked by. Isabella knows all the details. I'll buy us some time here, get Lisa to a hospital, and then start spreading the word. She nodded at me. I followed Wong towards his office. He had been speeding towards it since I told him. I entered the room and saw him in the corner, phone to his ear. I darted over to him immediately. Come in, pick up, he said. I grabbed the phone right out of his hand and canceled the call. Sorry, Alf, I said. I'm going to need your undivided attention for this meeting. Wong looked at me in frustration as I ripped the phone from his hand. Then his face seemed to soften and go back to that fake smile he loved to wear. What can I help you with, Co-Governor Donovan? He asked. I could use your cooperation. It would be great if you went on record and told me everything you, Gammon, and your father before you have been doing to manipulate things behind the scenes. Manipulate? I couldn't possibly know what you mean. I'm not playing games, Wong. Why do you do it? Is it money? Those corporations that planted their purchase representatives here pay you to keep the status quo so they can lower their taxes and buy up limited resources with no fear of government retaliation? Did they buy you out, Wong? Wong slammed his folder on his desk. You think I'm bought? You think this government is corrupt? Ha 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 ha! He laughed for a long time at a joke that seemed to have no punchline. Let me tell you, Dominic, he said, his voice now dripping with spite. This is the least corrupt you can get a government. If you let the ignorant masses vote as we used to, you would have hundreds of Representative Medinas, hundreds of little Representative Rainforest Corps, who con the people into letting them buy the government. I glared at him. He clearly felt the need to persuade me more. Lottocracy keeps them in check. They might buy a representative here or a senator there, or as a result, get a preferential deal on a bailout. But getting to 151 people every 2 years? No, just by laws of probability, it's not likely, and it won't last long if it does, and I can tamp it down if they do anything to threaten the sortition with it. Listen to yourself. You're nothing more than a power-mad authoritarian, I said. Authoritarian? Ha! Because of Lottocracy, you don't even know what an authoritarian is. Do you understand how unlikely it is to get 151 representatives, 61 senators, and 2 co-governors all at once with the same political leanings, all with authoritarian tendencies? It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter because you don't know it, he interrupted. We've had it studied, and it's absurdly low. I paused for a moment. He looked dead serious about this, like he was not exaggerating. I took statistics in high school, but did not remember enough to know if what he was saying had legs. Yet, in democracy, he continued, in democracies they seem all too often to elect authoritarians, persuasive and divisive conmen, who grab power for themselves and their own self-interests. We simply cannot allow such a dangerous form of government to take hold here again in Ispia. But don't you hear what you're saying? You're interfering in Lottocracy, the system you hold so sacred. You're meddling with it because you think that's what you have to do to preserve it. Any system that can't stand on its own like that is way too weak to be an ideal form of government. You shut your mouth! I saw Wong move from shuffling the papers on his desk to straight up crumbling them. My father put this system in place to protect all of us from the evils of other governments. If Lottocracy and its perfect randomness have to be saved by our non-random intervention, then that's what it takes. You are a threat to our Lottocracy, Dominic Donovan, and I will see to it, by any means, Lottocratic or not, that we save the principles of our Lottocracy. My head spun. He was delusional. He could not comprehend what he was doing was so antithetical to the values he claimed to protect. He wanted freedom through oppression. He wanted liberty through tyranny. All of his values, his hatred of other governments, all a facade. He only hated the government if he and his kind were not in charge of it. He was willing to do anything it took to achieve his ideals, even sacrificing his ideals. He was a walking paradox. Whatever, I said. I bought them enough time. By now Lisa's getting treated at the hospital, and I'm going to tell Balsawood what you've done and everything you've said to me. You're done. I stepped towards the door. Wong let out a maniacal cackling fit as I got there. You really think you have me cornered? He asked. Sweet, ignorant Dominic. I've played the game for years. You only just learned some of the most basic rules. It's you who's going to be done. I turned back to him. It doesn't matter if you have me killed. Enough people know what's going on at this point to put a picture together. You won't get to all of them. He continued cackling. You half-wit unlucky winner, he said, using a term I never thought I would hear from him. No, I'm not going to kill you, no matter how much Gammon pleads with me to let him do it. It's personal now. You've offended me in the very system I'm sworn to protect. I'm going to use this very government to see you impeached and locked up. You will witness as this system perfectly purges the virus that you are from it. He continued laughing. I quit bothering with him and just walked out the door. I hurried my way down and out of the Capitol building. I noticed as I did this, 2 people were following me. Shoot, that's right. My shadows that Gammon put on me. Just how much of this had they seen, I wondered. I should assume going forward that Gammon already knows that I know, even if Wong never makes contact. I was out of options for the most part, and just had to bank on the theory that they would not be able to directly intervene against me without violating Wong's new rule. I made my way to the Reeder Walt Medical Center, the nearest facility dedicated to people who serve the government. I tried to weave and zag on my way there to throw off my pursuers. While I lost sight of them, I would not bet that I managed to lose them. I made my way into the waiting room, where I saw Matt, Megan, Isabella, and Jimmy, all waiting for me. Miss Fay is going to be okay, Megan said. Her throat is swelling, and she can't talk at all now, but she's in stable condition. How'd it go with Wong? Matt asked me. As well as you could expect, I said. He said he's not going to kill me because he wants me put in prison and to watch as I lose. I think I believe him. It's a very Wong thing to do, Isabella said. He doesn't consider it winning unless he's winning unconditionally and on his terms. Even Gammon, I think, understands that part of him. Miss Ray has filled us in on the brief history, but what's our plan, Mr. Donovan? Megan asked me. I looked at the 4 faces staring at me. They all seemed to look at me to come up with a plan for this. When the hell did I actually become a leader? Not just one picked by a random number generator. I stopped and I thought. I took a deep breath, then looked back at them. Okay, here's what we're going to do, I said, turning to Matt first. You've already started making connections in the Senate, so I need you to start reaching out to them. Let them know what's going on, and have them ready to vote in favor of Lisa's bill. Matt nodded. I turned to Megan. Mrs. Hoffman, I need you to get a hold of Lisa's bill for review. Have a working copy for any adjustments we need to make on the fly before we get it on the floor. Make sure everything about the details is foolproof and that we're ready to take it to the floor and get it passed as soon as possible." She smiled. I turned to Jimmy. "Jimmy, we need to get control of the narrative. We need to get an expose out now about all the corruption that's going on under Wong and Gammon. Make sure it's well-sourced and easy to validate, so other outlets, a little more reputable, can pick it up too." Jimmy looked deep in thought. I turned to Isabella. "Isabella, I need you first and foremost to stay here and be safe. I'm not sure Wong is extending the same courtesy to you as he is to me. Do what you can from your phone to get House members ready to vote on potentially ending the Lottocracy." She took a big swig of coffee. I watched as they stepped out into their separate corners. Matt was on his phone to contact the senators. Megan was calling up some staffers to get started. I saw Jimmy putting some pen to paper. Isabella was texting like there was no tomorrow. This was it. This was going to work. Together, we might actually have the ability to expose Wong and Gammon and overthrow this highly manipulated system masquerading as random. I felt so alive. Then suddenly, yeah, sorry, I can't help but think you maybe didn't hear me," Matt said. "These are real people's lives on the line. You want to talk to me about doing it in exchange for a favor for you?" I looked on nervously as the person on the other end responded to Matt. "No, that's ridiculous. I'm not willing to negotiate on human rights. You're no better than a Nazi." He hung up the phone. I turned my attention to Megan. "Yes, Miss Jessica, that's right. I need you to write up a copy, and I need Evan to bring over some of those documents to my office." I saw her face frown hearing the response on the other end. No, not you carry them and Evan writes. Men don't have good handwriting, unless they're, well, you know. You also shouldn't carry so much stuff. You're starting to put on a muscular figure, and you won't find a husband that way." Megan looked surprised as someone on the other end hung up. Balsawood approached me. "Hey, boss," he said. "I have some qualms. I only have access to info on this story as a result of my position here as a representative of the government. I don't know if I feel fully comfortable writing a story that I have exclusive access to due to my position as a servant of the people." What do you mean?" I asked him. "No one else could write this story." "Like, it's just exactly that. I have insider knowledge that would knowingly let me advance my career in an unfair way compared to my peers. I have too strong a sense of ethics as a journalist and a government representative to abuse my position like this, even if it could be for a good cause." I could only stare blankly at the most insane thing I had ever heard. Isabella approached me next. "I'll still work through this with you, Dominic," she said, "but I can't obey your order to stay here. I'm going to go back to the House chamber." "Isabella, he will kill you, and we need you alive. I can't live with myself if I stay here, in the comfort and safety of this hospital, while you risk it all to bring down the system I helped build. I need to be on the House floor when the bill is being debated, facilitating. That's my job." I let out a sigh. This was not going according to plan. Matters only seemed to get worse when I heard a rumbling in the hospital. "Hey, turn on subtropical TV," a voice said. "There's some sort of crazy breaking news." A nurse changed the channel on the television. I could not believe my eyes as I saw an anchor woman interviewing Wong in his own office. All of us moved closer to see exactly what was going on. "Chairman Wong," the interviewer said, "for your extensive time in government, you have almost never given press interviews or any sort of comment. What kind of story brings you now to the forefront to speak so openly like this?" He sighed. "Me and my father before me really took pride in being apolitical, uninvolved facilitators in what we both believed to be a perfect system," he lied. "But never in either of our careers have we ever faced such an existential threat to our government, and frankly our way of life." I clenched my fist. "One of our newest co-governors, Dominic Donovan, is an authoritarian actor, hell-bent on taking the government over himself and ruling with an iron fist. He attempted to kill Representative Lisa Fay for putting forward a bill that could threaten his rule. Our security intel now even believes that he may have staged his own attempted assassination as a way of drawing support for himself." My mouth went agape. I knew he planned on cooking up lie after lie, but never thought his game plan would be so brazen as to just accuse me of everything that he did as a way of covering up his crimes. I started to calm myself down. This was not an act out of strength, but out of desperation. He must have realized since he overextended this time that he needed to take drastic action. What else could have prompted him to appear on television and try and litigate all this out in the open? It was so against Wong's style of moving in silence. It lacked subtlety. It lacked nuance. "That's an incredible accusation," the interviewer said. "We've reviewed your securities analysis, and so far we find it quite credible. But we have to ask, why not simply arrest Donovan and be done with this?" "That's a good question," Wong said. "Our legal system is murky on whether a sitting co-governor can be arrested or stand trial prior to being impeached. In theory, the office could even immediately pardon him. That leads to the other piece, which is warning others about him. Right, because if the other co-governors don't know what he's done, there's a chance he could make them conspire with them. Exactly, and it's not just them. Anyone who works with Donovan should know he is trouble, and he's clearly erratic. I hate to say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if they wound up dead. He looked straight into the camera for this. For a moment, I watched him switch from the facade of his charming chairman demeanor to the one he showed me in his office. It was brief, but I knew the others in the room saw it. That was a message, for us. That was his game, a final threat to us, as if to say back off before this ends messy. And so, in that case, how does the government plan to deal with this rogue co-governor? She asked. The way the system is supposed to handle these things, Wong responded. Representative Medina plans tomorrow during an emergency session to put forward a bill to impeach co-governor Donovan. The Senate will convene as well with preemptive legislation to convict him if such legislation passes. We will rid ourselves of this threat to our government. I bit my lip in frustration. Preemptive conviction? Darn me for never learning procedure, because I almost wanted to turn to my right and ask if this was something they could even do. If Wong controlled the Senate half as much as Isabella controlled the House, he could easily push that through tomorrow. Then they would have to vote to undo it, and Wong could focus all of his attention on whipping House votes. This was bad. That's really all I should say for now. Anything more would be speculation and editorializing, Wong said. He stood up from his chair. The camera seemed to follow him as he started to walk out. He turned back to it one last time before he said something to it. God bless Ispia, and long live the Lottocracy. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of Lottocracy. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast on the app, give it a like on YouTube, and share with anyone who you think might also enjoy. Lottocracy is a D2 Stories production. You can stay up to date with Lottocracy and all future D2 Stories productions by following us on social media. That'll be D2 Stories across just about any of the big platforms. I appreciate you listening and hope to have you listen again next week.